Hi, my name is Dustin. I started with Cutco back in 2013. So I was a sales rep, then went to branch manager right away because I couldn't wait. So I went rep to branch. We were number 11 in 2014. A lot of fun. And then I went to school at UW-Madison, graduated in 2017, went out as a district manager as well too. And then as a district manager, I hired Austin. So Austin is my co-contributor here, co-entrepreneur. What's great about Johnson & Stern, we started this in 2019 when we were actually 2 years into starting Cutco. So we were district managers at the time and just realized that there was a huge need for getting your taxes done. And just nobody was really fulfilling that. Even when we were in training, we were district managers, we would really nail home the tax talk because we, knew a little bit more about it. But raise of hands, anybody remember day 3 training tax talk from before, right? So it's kind of a quick conversation that comes and goes. This will be a great refresher for that so that you know exactly what you do for your taxes. And at the very end, we'll take questions as well too, because I know it is very individualized. Everyone's taxes are a little bit different. So my home office is in Madison, Wisconsin, and Austin is up in Minneapolis. I've done most of the company trips as well too. I've been on national trips, region trips. So I've been a CSP. I've been a FSM in the fair and show team as well too. I've basically done a lot of the business. So I only tell you that to let you know that you're in good company, that we're here to help make taxes easy for you. I'll let Austin share a little bit about his time with Cutco as well too.
Yeah, thanks, Dustin. So I started with Cutco back in 2017 out of Dustin's La Crosse district office. And so I had gotten a random text from a friend that said, "Hey, you looking for some work?" And I said, "I'm a broke college kid. So yeah, absolutely I am." And so we ended up going down to La Crosse, and that following summer became his assistant manager. And then once COVID had started, I actually moved up to the Minneapolis area where I helped Dustin co-run a virtual branch office. And then that following year ran my own district office out of Wausau, Wisconsin, at which point we kind of decided, hey, we want to really focus all in on taxes, and had left the company to really put our primary focus in Johnson & Stern Tax Solutions.
So 2021, Austin and I both officially had left Cutco as district managers. So we no longer sell Cutco. But since then, we work with hundreds of sales reps, assistant managers, key staff members, district managers, division managers, all across the country. So we're happy to help, and hopefully we can share you some knowledge today. Feel free to take any notes. If you have questions, like I said, we'll get to them at the very end. But let's just jump into the meat of the conversation. So what are we going to cover today? One, we'll talk about being an independent contractor. So this is what I would call maybe a 101 talk. So if you're like me when I first started and didn't know anything about taxes, this is a great foundation. If you know a little bit about taxes, we'll share some extra tax tips for you. But at a certain level too, it does make sense to work with a tax professional, and we'll talk about the time it probably makes sense to do that too. So independent contractor, what's the difference between that and W-2? Business expense organization and how to download your Vector Connect expenses. That is one of the large areas that we see people miss for taxes, is forgetting to take those Vector Connect expenses. We'll talk about how to save money on taxes, and then wrap up with what's needed to file and exactly how to file. If you want to go and self-file, we'll talk about those options. If you want to work with us, we'll talk about that too. And at the very end, with working with us, we do have a little bit of a special bonus. I'll share some of our goals, since I know how important goal sharing is with Vector community. We'll share some of ours as well too. All right. So Blast from the Past is a picture at year-end banquet with one of the other district managers I put out, Lexi Mitchell. Just a little side tangent there. A fun time back in college when we were promoting a lot of great people inside Wisconsin. So let's talk about being an independent contractor. Most of you have likely had a W-2 job before, or are familiar with the concept of when you get your W-2 and you get your paycheck from your W-2 job as an employee, the taxes are taken out. So the actual net, what you get direct deposited, is a little bit sadder than the actual amount that it should have been, because taxes are already taken out. As an independent contractor, the difference is you're paid everything all up front. So if you didn't notice, Cutco does pay you everything all up front right away. So there's no taxes taken out. And as a contractor, there's a couple of different, salespeople are contractors. We have gig workers who also will get 1099s. 1099s will happen in the real estate area or as a contractor for any other business. The big difference between a contractor and an employee is generally contractors can set their own schedules. They use their own equipment, and so they are contracted with the company, which is why it works so nicely with Cutco as well too. One of the great perks that I should shout out is, we get to pick our own schedule. We get to pick when the demos are, when the interviews are, if you're a manager and whatnot. So one of the great things about being an independent contractor. At the end of the year, employees are going to get their W-2s. For us, at the end of the year, we get our 1099. So that number is, if you will, the top line of your Schedule C form, which will essentially give you your business profit for the year. At the end of the year, what we do is we pay taxes on that income since none of them are withheld. And there are a couple types of taxes that I'll talk about in a second too. But the other really important distinguishing part is that we take your income, we subtract off your business expenses, those deductions, to arrive at your profit. And the profit is what you're actually taxed on. So it's not that 1099 number. That's not what you're going to be taxed on. After we subtract off your business expenses, which again, you can't use as a W-2 employee. So another big perk, if you have mileage or travel for work or have supplies or pay for your cell phone or anything else when you're an employee, you don't get to write those off. Those are non-deductible expenses. But as an independent contractor, we can. So we'll drill down on that in a little bit as well too. Why does it pay? Okay, so I talked a little bit about this, but no taxes are taken out of your paycheck. There are two types of taxes that you actually pay on your tax return. So there are your income taxes and then your payroll taxes. If you look at a W-2, and this, I'll talk a little bit about this because it's not really relevant to 1099 people, but in your W-2, you'll see all the boxes that they're withholding taxes for. You'll see income tax. So this is like your normal tax bracket, whether you're at 10%, 12%, 22, 24, and so on. Your normal income taxes, that I think everyone is really familiar with. So I'll just mention again, you have income tax to pay depending on your income for the year. Similar with state taxes. If you live in one of the states, there's 11 states that don't have income taxes. You won't see this. So like if you live in Texas, you won't. But for like us in Wisconsin, we have income taxes as well too on that. And then the payroll tax is the second one that people generally forget about when they look at their tax form and they go, why is my tax bill so high? Most of the time, if they're a 1099 person, we find it's because of the payroll taxes or self-employment taxes. They're interchangeable in this sense. So your Social Security and Medicare will be on the next slide. That's what we're paying in addition to our income taxes. And that's why sometimes vector tax bills can be a little bit higher, is because they forget about the self-employment tax. But again, a good reminder is that that tax is on profit, not your gross income. So it's not the 1099 number. We want to add on all the business expenses so we arrive at a nice gross income number, profit for the year, and that's what we'll pay the tax on. So one last slide about the actual tax itself. So self-employment tax, again, is 15.3%. This is a flat tax, and I'll make sure to slow down here. I know I talk pretty fast. So self-employment tax is 15.3%. That is broken up to 12.4 for your Social Security and then 2.9 for your Medicare. And so they lump those together and they call it self-employment tax. Again, with a W-2, it's normally being withheld, so you don't have to pay this tax in at the end of the year. But as a self-employed individual, this is a flat tax that we pay in addition to our income tax on your tax return. So what our goal name of the game is realistically, let's find as many great business deductions as possible to get your taxable income as low as possible. And that way we can maximize our deductions and pay the least amount of taxes. So I will have Austin actually share a little bit more about those business deductions.
Awesome. Thank you, Dustin. So yeah, what is a business deduction? What is a tax write-off? So a write-off is going to be something that you pay for because you needed it either for your business, and a prime example of that, first one off, meals at 50%. So let's say after an appointment, you and whoever you were field training with, or even after a team meeting, you want to go get McDonald's, Chick-fil-A, Perkins, anything like that. That meal is a tax deduction. So any kind of meals you get, whether it's, again, going to like the gas station for food, anything like that, when it's during a work day, you can go ahead and deduct that on your taxes. The next one, the home office deduction. Most of you, if not all of you, are in some level of a home office right now in some capacity, especially being a Cutco rep. It's nice being able to do virtual demos from home. So if you are in your dorm room, your bedroom, or you have a dedicated area for working from home, you can now deduct that portion on your taxes as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on in the call. Business miles. If you haven't already wrote down business miles, take a second, write down business miles. That is one of the largest expenses that we find most Cutco reps and managers just forget about. And it's really important because if you're going to and from appointments, let's say you're driving 100 miles to do that. That's a business deduction that we'll look at here once we start filling out our expense spreadsheet. Now, what are some other business expenses that you have for Cutco specifically? Purchasing Cutco. The one that I always like to reference is the Cutco peeler. If you're really trying to close that last sale with Mr. and Mrs. Jones and you want to throw in the peeler for free, well, you probably spent $8, $9 on that peeler. That's a business expense. So be sure you're tracking that. Your cell phone bill. If you're the one paying for your cell phone bill, you're using that to call people to get those appointments set up, calling your manager, you need it for work. So therefore, that is now another business expense that you can deduct is your cell phone bill. Conferences, whether it's SC1, SC2, summer kickoff, year-end banquet, any Cutco conference that you're paying for to attend is also a business expense. Now, this next category is kind of going to encompass a few different things. So Zoom, software, and equipment. If you are paying for a Zoom subscription, if you had to purchase new earbuds, if you purchased a new laptop, pens, pencils, notebooks, anything that you purchased because you needed it for your business, that's also a business expense. So be sure you're keeping track of anything that you're spending money on, keeping those receipts and holding on to them so that way you're deducting them on your tax bill. The one exclusion to this rule is clothing. So if you are purchasing suits, dresses, anything that you can think of, any clothes that you would have purchased, that is actually not a business expense. And the reason why it's not is because you can wear those things for pretty much at any point during the day at any given time. The one rule to that is if it is a Cutco pole, for example, we have our Johnson & Certain polos, we have the embroidery on there, because it has our logo on it and we paid for to have the logo on it, that is a business expense. But any other normal kind of clothing, unfortunately, is not actually a business expense. So be sure that you're not telling your tax person, hey, I bought $300 worth of dress shirts, because it's not going to be deductible.
Yeah, so you'll see that there is gray area here, and Austin will kind of look at a little bit more about the defining factor of a business expense here.
So the IRS's definition of a business expense, the cost must be considered ordinary and necessary by the IRS. So the IRS doesn't necessarily know if something is too lavish or not for your business. So that's kind of when Dustin was talking about that gray area. But again, that doesn't mean you need to go out and buy the diamond encrusted earbuds. Because again, if that's $3,000, the IRS may have a few questions about that. So as long as it's not too lavish and above and beyond what you would normally expend on it, then it can be considered a business expense. Now, what is an audit? If you've ever heard the word audit before and taxes, it's probably not a good thing. In this instance, it's really just the IRS just asking proof for your receipts. It's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just they want to make sure that you're keeping track of things correctly and that you're doing the responsible thing of holding onto your receipts and not buying things that wouldn't necessarily be considered a business expense. Now, be sure that you're keeping your business receipts for at least 3 years, because the IRS can go back and audit you for several years in the past. So always holding on to those for 3 years, whether it is in a drawstring bag, a shoebox, a picture folder on your phone of just all of your receipts, whatever it makes sense to do. Just be sure that if you take one thing away from this section, it is hold on to your receipts. Now, what are some of the big do's and don'ts specifically with Cutco? So I just talked about it, save your receipts. So again, if you haven't wrote that down, write down save your receipts, because that's just how important that really is. Next, keeping track of your mileage. One of the ones that I typically recommend to people is Mile IQ. Essentially, all it does, I want to say it is $60 for the whole year, unless their pricing has changed recently. And all you do is you turn it on when you start to drive somewhere, and it keeps track of your miles. That way, you're not having to manually do it yourself or go look on the map to see how far it was from your house to Mrs. Jones' house and just make it more difficult than it needs to be. So finding an app that's really helpful for you to keep track of those miles. Next, talk to a professional if your net profit is $50,000 or more. So net profit is whatever your Cutco income is minus your expenses. That's your net profit. If it's $50,000 or more, there are some different things that you can do to actually lower the amount you pay in taxes, such as starting up an LLC, paying yourself a W-2. But again, I don't want to get too much into the weeds of that because that can get to be a little bit complex. But if that is the case, be sure to either reach out to one of us or whoever is doing your taxes, and they'll be able to help you out there. The next one, save money in withholdings. This is about as important as saving your receipts and tracking your mileage. So save at a minimum 10% of your paycheck and up to 30% if you're a field sales manager or just a manager in general. And you can email oliandp@cutco.com. So that's a good email address to write down. And the reason I say to do that is because when tax time comes and you wind up with a $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 tax bill that you maybe weren't expecting, you at least have that money set aside in your withholdings so that way you can pull it out come tax time and help use it to pay down your tax bill. Worst case scenario, you don't have a tax bill and you have a lot of money just kind of saved on the side. It's kind of how I like to look at it. Now, what are some of the don'ts? Don't spend your money on things you don't need. If you are buying something simply because you think it's going to lower your tax bill, it's probably not a good thing that needs to be purchased. So I would avoid doing that. If you're just spending money to hopefully lower your tax bill, I'd much rather see you guys save that money and then use it to pay your tax bill, is at least my go-to. Next, don't assume you won't owe any in taxes. This is one of the big misconceptions. You make a bunch of money with Cutco, you think you have a bunch of business expenses, and you're thinking, hey, I'm not going to have to pay in anything for taxes. And then you talk to your tax person, they file your taxes, and you have a $5,000 tax bill. So that, again, kind of goes in tandem with just saving money in your withholdings to ensure that you have that money set aside to help pay your tax bill when that time comes.
This is all just to set really good expectations. When I worked at H&R Block, they would call them tax surprises, where we would role play a tax surprise with a client so that we could help get their emotions down, look at the logicalness and see what we could do. We just don't want any tax surprises. So again, setting good expectations from the beginning. And after you've filed your taxes 1 year with Vector already, it usually gets much easier to understand what it's going to look like in future years too. So I have not been a rep since 21. So I am unable in my current state to show you Vector Connect and how you would download your Vector Connect expenses. But what I will do is pull up a video of me from 2021 doing that same thing. So feel free to take any notes on the process of some of the expenses, and then it'll show, Austin will walk through how you can put those onto our business expense spreadsheet. If you don't already have it, you can go to johnsonandstern.com/vector. And you feel free, if you want to do this now, you can. Otherwise, you can grab it later. And this download business expense worksheet right here, this is going to download the expense worksheet for us. I believe it's the same one. If not, it might be last year's. But either way, it's the same difference. It's the same tool, essentially. And after this, we'll take some questions.
When you're in Vector Connect, you'll see my front page. So I haven't been a sales rep since 2021. So mine will look a little bit probably sadder than yours because I don't have any sales since then. But when you go into my account on the drop down here on the left, and then you'll go to financial, you'll see in here that we have a tax forms button right there. So we're going to click on tax forms. And again, you won't see, you'll see some of mine in here. It looks like we've got $455 from last year. But you'll see that this is where you can go ahead and download your 1099. So this will be a PDF version of your 1099. So that way you can get it to your tax repair, or you can use it for your personal taxes if you're doing them yourself. So now that we have our income, let's take a look at the beginning of our business expenses. So when you go into the drop downs again, we're going to open up personal reports here, and you'll see that there is a charges icon right there. So we're going to click on charges, and then you'll be able to select a date range. You'll want to make this an entry date range. Normally you would pick last year, right? So you would go at the beginning of the year until the end of 2023. Is speaking for 2023's taxes, right? Since we're now in 2024. But I am going to go back further just because I know I don't have any data on here. I'm going to go back to 2021 just to show you what it might look like. and it only works for a full year. So you want to make sure that you're not doing multiple years either. So now that we go back to 2021, once you hit get data, it's going to spit out any kind of charges that you had for the whole year. And the best part about this tool is that you can click export right here, and it's going to export it. See, this pops up nicely into an Excel spreadsheet for you. And so that way you can organize all of these expenses. I'll have Austin go through the expenses themselves, but as a manager, you're generally paying for things like demo contribution, if you have any kind of travel or conferences. Generally, conferences are going to be the big one that reps will have as well too. Any kind of conference or promotional product are things that you want to make sure that you grab for your taxes before you file them.
I'm going to go ahead and walk through what it's like to fill out our Johnson & Stern expenses workbook if you're a Cutco rep or manager. On the left-hand side, you can see that I have a My Charges spreadsheet from Vector Connect. And then on the right-hand side, I have our Johnson & Stern expenses workbook. In the expense category, you can see things ranging from advertising, cell phone, internet, text to schedule. We got office supplies, team meetings, business travel, meals, anything that you can think of that you may have a Cutco expense for is going to fit in one of these categories. When we jump back over to the My Charges sheet, you can see that I've already separated some of these in the type of categories they would go into. We've got ads for Craigslist ads. National web ads are also going to be ads. Now, just because you see these on here doesn't mean you're going to see these on your spreadsheet. If you're a Cutco rep, more than likely you're not seeing a lot of these Craigslist ads and national web ads, mailers, things like that. But when you become a manager, you'll start seeing a lot of these start to show up. First off, we then have your Craigslist ads for $420 and then your national web ads for $375. And we combine those together. You're going to get $795, which we're going to show right here. And now it's filled out. Next, a few categories I want to make sure we walk through are withholdings. Now, these tax withholdings, whether it is for your mailers, your assistant managers, doesn't matter what it is, withholdings are not tax deductible. That's essentially just like taking money and putting into like a checking account of some kind. So none of those are going to be deductible. You can see there were some fast start awards that were sent out, and those are going to be underneath supplies for $174.65. So we go to the spreadsheet, we find supplies, and we do $174.65. And on the bottom here, it's going to add all of your expenses up. We've got travel for $25 here. It was an SC1 conference. So you go to conferences and you just type in 25. Now you can see this one here for SC2. There was a charge for 25, but then a cancellation amount for 25. So the money was sent back to the rep or manager. This zeroed out, which means it's not actually going to be a business expense, so we can take that out. Another example you can see of this was the national trip. Same thing. They were charged a few different times, but then refunded at the end of it. So therefore, none of it gets put in there. Now, had this been an expense that wasn't refunded, there would have been a $1,000 charge here for travel. So I'm going to go ahead and fill out the rest of the spreadsheet here so that we can see what it looks like when we have all the categories filled in. Now that we have all of our expenses put in, you can see after adding them all up, they total $15,194.68. So that's all you need to send over to us as far as these business expenses go on this section. Now moving over to the next section here for your vehicle information, you're going to want to put in your year, make, and model, the date that vehicle was placed in service, which just means the day you started using it for work, your total business miles that were driven, and you answer these two questions as well. Was this vehicle available for personal use? And did you or your spouse have another vehicle? It's really important that you're tracking all of your mileage because that is the number one expense that we find Cutco reps and managers forget to keep track of. And it's important that you're not estimating this number either, because if you are and you were to get audited and you don't have proof of these miles, the IRS is going to take all that deduction away. So we throw in all of our information here, as well as in this home office deduction. Now, most of you are working from home, if not every single person watching this, probably working from home in some capacity. Now, what you can do is you just take the total square footage of your whole home. So let's say it is 1,500 square feet. And then the area specifically used for work. So your office of some kind, maybe it's just a portion of your bedroom or whatever it ends up being. You'll just put in the square footage of that room as well. Now, once you have all these deductions in here, then you are all set and good to go to submit this over to your tax professional, whether that is us or whoever may be completing your taxes, even if you're just doing it for yourself. It's good to have notes of all of these expenses. So be sure to reach out to your tax professional if you have any questions about how to categorize certain expenses or if you're unsure if something is a business expense. All right, now that we've got all the expenses categorized, this next document on the right-hand side is called your Schedule C. So this is just your profit and loss, and this is where all of your income is going to go, as well as all of your expenses. So you can see I've got it pretty much filled out for Dustin here. We've got Dustin Johnson, Principal Business, Cutco Sales, and then we've marked off a few boxes right along the side here. Your tax software is going to be able to go through most of this or whatever tax preparation service you're going through. Now, part one, you can see this where your income is going to be at. So Dustin's gross income is $50,000. The number that goes on this line is just whatever's on your 1099 from Cutco. Now, when you go to part two here, you're going to be able to see all the expenses that were on the spreadsheet here. So we've got advertising, the mileage deduction, commissions, fees, insurance, everything's all in here. You can see his total expenses were $15,195. So then that number gets subtracted from the $50,000 number, and that's how you're going to get your tentative profit, which is $34,805. Now, after the business use of your home deduction, which is right here, and looks like Dustin's total deduction was $1,000 for that, that also gets subtracted from here, and then it's going to go on this bottom line here for your net profit of $33,805. Now, this is the number that you're going to be paying your federal income tax, your state income tax, as well as your self-employment tax. So self-employment tax is based specifically off of this number here.
Let's talk a little bit about how we're going to file. So that last part there with the Schedule C, that is a little bit more nitty gritty than maybe you need, but that is what your tax software will prepare when you look at the actual like stack of tax documents that they give you after you're done filing, and it's like 60 pages. That's one of the pages in there, and that's where all the Cutco stuff shows up. So let's talk about how to file. So first off, you could go and file on your own. In fact, that's a great option for many reps, especially like, let's say you just started in the fall, you didn't have a very big 1099 this year, you're looking to save some extra money. Self-filing is certainly a great way to do it. You can use H&R Block Online, TurboTax. The only one that I kind of recommend, and feel free if you are planning on self-filing, I would definitely write it down, is freetaxusa.com is the lowest amount that I've seen on any like filing site and the simplest to use. So freetaxusa.com. Again, a great option if you feel really confident in your taxes and they're simple enough to do. Now, there are two other options on the screen. Third-party preparers. When do you use an accountant? When do you work with someone? Well, for most of our clients, it's because their taxes have gotten pretty complex and they just don't want to do it. So we haven't talked about if you were a student or if you had rental properties, a W-2 job, maybe you had multiple jobs, student loan interest throughout the year, maybe you're a dependent, maybe you need to have that conversation with your parents to file as an independent this year. There are a lot of complexities that can happen with taxes because there's a lot of potential outcomes in the world for making money. So with a lot of those extra tax code items, it's easier to generally talk to a tax professional about. And the reason why I think we're really good specifically is because we have been Cutco reps ourselves. So whether you decide to go to the family person nearby or a CPA or something like that, or work with us, our goal is to make sure that your taxes are easy, they're understandable, we get you the most beneficial outcome. I'll see a lot of district managers and branch managers start to work with tax professionals because that's when things start to get a little bit complex. But feel free, if you're the person like me who at the time was like, I just don't even want to do any of this stuff, sometimes it's easier to pay someone else to do it, right? So if you're happy to use us, I'll give you a little bit on how to use Johnson & Stern this year. So you can sign up at that johnsonandstern.com/vector page. There is a become a client. It's a little small. I should have made it bigger, but there is a become a client button on there. You'll save $25. We do a $25 discount for our Vector family first year as a client as well too. So if you decide to sign up, here's what our process looks like, and it's pretty simple. So one, we do an intro call. You'll see our calendar on there. When you jump on our calendar, you're either going to talk with Austin or myself, and then it takes about 30 minutes. We'll run through your whole tax situation. We'll give you a final price estimate as well too, and then let you know what tax documents you need to send to us. Then you'll get your client portal, works just like a Dropbox, fully secure, where you drag and drop your documents in and let us know that we can go ahead and get started. It takes about 4 to 6 business days for us to have your return ready. And the thing that we do differently than other tax services that I really just thought at the time like made so much sense, but no one does this, is we walk through your tax return. It's novel, right? I don't know. I think it's something that every tax business should do, but I'd never run into a preparer that would walk through everything line by line. So we send over a video walkthrough, a screen share just like this, a Loom video, but not a Google Meet, to walk through your tax return to make sure there's nothing missing, that it's accurate, and we can point out areas for you to save money as well too. Then you sign and pay through the client portal. You don't need to go to someone's tax office. You don't need to wait in line for anything like that. So I think we are pretty awesome. If it hasn't sold you yet and you're a little bit excited about it, I will say that our goal is to add 17 new Cutco clients before the end of March. That is our goal specifically. So if you're looking to become a client, feel free to sign up. We do a TV drawing. So we raffle off 4 40-inch smart TVs every April 1st to our clients for the ones that file with us. Just as a little fun thing that we've been doing since 2019, I guess, when we started. And then every single year, we partner with the National Forest Association to plant trees and reforest the earth, which is kind of cool. So we have increased this number every single year since we've started. We've planted well over 1,000 trees thus far. It might be a lot more than that now that I'm thinking about it. It might be, I should have looked at the number before we jumped on the call. But this year we're planting 5 trees for every tax return. So not only are we friendly in the sense that we don't print off a ton of paper because this is virtual, everything's PDFs for the most part, we also plant 5 trees for every tax return that we file. So another reason why to use us. Again, year-round support may be the only other thing that would help you make the decision. Generally, when you work with a CPA, sometimes they're available year-round, but they're usually working with a lot of their business clients. If you're using tax software, it can be a pain in the butt to get a hold of that customer service. We're available year-round, so if anyone ever needs to schedule a call, you can jump back on our calendar. We respond to emails within a business day or so, so we're always happy to help. And even if you're not looking at filing with us, just to wrap everything up, feel free to connect on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. Again, I'll send out the resource with our spreadsheet in an email to everyone today as well too. We do have other videos about expenses on johnsonandstern.com/vector. They're very similar. And if you did find any value in this talk, feel free to share it, the recording, with any of your reps or fellow managers, because I know it can get really confusing, and I'm hoping we kind of made it easy and spelled it out a little bit more for you.